Hey guys, LootWizard here with another Soulforge video on Gems of War, and we have a new legendary troop out right here. We're going to take a look at it. We're going to try to get this with our event keys a little bit later on in the video. But first of all, let's just go to the Soulforge and get things going here. We're going to take a look at weapons, see if there's anything good in here. And I don't really see anything. You have a couple of unique weapons here for the Kingdom event that's going on. These basic mana generating weapons. I don't really think there's too many great troops for Merlantis Kingdom or for the merfolk. So I'm not going to recommend getting any of those weapons unless you're trying to collect those types of things. So moving on from that, let's go to the troops. I always like to go through these summoning troops really quick. Mercy is a good troop for several reasons. It does start with full mana, cleanses all allies when you cast it, and it does transform purple gems to yellow, and it gives life to the weakest enemy. So there's a lot of good things to say about Mercy. If you're a pretty high level and you just don't have Mercy yet, you might want to try to get that in the blue summoning stones. And we'll just move on down the list here and see if there's anything else that catches my eye. Child of Summer is pretty good too. Converts brown gems to red. It conjures a firestorm. Starts with full mana. It's good for some teams that rely on a firestorm. Vlad the Unsated is a pretty decent troop. It will steal life from an enemy boosted by its own life. So a third of its own life is added to the amount that it will steal. And so it's a pretty decent troop in some teams. But I don't know if I'd recommend it this time around because, you know, your summoning stones, you're going to use those to craft weapons over here. As you can see, the green is for whatever weapon I have selected here. This top one, you're going to use 300 for that. So a lot of times, you know, if you don't have, if there's not a good enough troop here, then I just really don't recommend it because you want to save your summoning stones for weapons to craft. So really the only thing that I would recommend the most is that one up here, Mercy. So moving on then to legendary troops. This week we have Goblin King, Kraken, Garuda, and Umberwolf. So out of these, I would say probably Kraken is number one because it does do damage to the last two enemies. It creates mana, 8 blue gems, and then there's a 35% chance to devour the last enemy. Its traits aren't really amazing, but you do have 3 damage to all enemies on a 4-5 match. But yeah, the Kraken is still a decent legendary troop. So I would say that's number one here on the list. And then Uberwolf is kind of an interesting troop. I use it mostly for mana generation, especially in teams where I'm farming for souls, because when you create a Darkstorm at the start of every single turn, you're going to have more purple gems falling down on the board. And that's really great for things like the Dragon Soul and Pharaoh's Ra and your soul farming troops. So that's usually where I use Umberwolf. So if you're really trying to, you know, farm those souls, Umberwolf might be something you want to craft. Otherwise, I don't really recommend crafting legendaries ever because most of them you can just get opening keys. But I would say in order of importance, Kraken is number one for me, and then Umberwolf. And that goes for legendaries. Now on to the mythic troops that we can craft this week. We have Yasmin's Chosen, which is it's an average mythic troop, I think. Once you get it, it has looping potential is really where its power comes into, because the scatter damage really doesn't do much. But when you create the 10 green gems, it does use green here. So if you have another troop with it that can create green gems, or if you combine it with something like Mountain Crusher, because it does use brown, or you could use Essence of Evil as well and shut down some enemies. Once you get this thing looping, it does do pretty good. So that's a pretty decent, I'd say it's around you know, mid B tier mythic troop. And then moving on, we have Mistralis, and this thing is actually pretty decent just because it does enchant all allies on a 4-5 match. It does gain an extra turn, jumbles the board, which gives you another chance for possibly aligning a 4 or 5 match and giving you another turn on top of the extra turn that you're getting. And it does do a little splash damage. So this troop, as a mythic, I would say is definitely somewhere around like upper B tier, maybe lower A tier, just because it has the potential of extra turns, and enchanting all of your allies is definitely a bonus there. So it's a decent troop. Now, the next two are pretty powerful. I'm going to say Lord of Slaughter. I have this one already, and I love it. Works great. Really fun to use. It creates 6 brown gems, then it converts all the brown gems to Doom Skulls, and it will inflict 1 to 2 bleeds and 1 to 2 death marks on random enemies. In its traits, it does summon a Doomstorm at the start of battle, which will allow more Doom Skulls to fall down on the board. So if you have something like Mountain Crusher, you're going to have a lot of more of those Doom Skulls coming down on the board with that explosion. It does have a 100% chance to ignore armor with skull damage, so if you do put it at the top of your team, it will 100% of the time ignore armor and go straight into life with its attack damage. The only downside of this is you only have a 25% mitigation here of skull damage that it takes. So it's going to be a little bit soft, and you put it at the top of the team. Just take that into note. But it's really powerful, and stuff like Mountain Crusher, and I know there's some other good weapons and troops that go along pretty well with this. But it's a really powerful troop, and it's going to be probably my number 1 pick here. But we do have another troop, which this one I've been waiting to craft because I haven't been doing the campaigns. And for those of you that have been around for a little while, this was the first mythic troop here that was available when for the first campaign that they released. And since I didn't complete that campaign, I didn't get this mythic troop. I would have had to pay $10 in order to get that. I decided not to, so I've been waiting for it to come around so I could craft it. So finally that day is here, and I can craft this thing. So this troop is very similar to the Lord of Slaughter in the sense that it does create some Doom Skulls. So it does a little spell damage here to an enemy, and that is boosted by Doom Skulls. So you get an extra 10 spell damage that it does to an enemy per Doom Skull that's on the board, which can, if you have 10 Doom Skulls on the board, that's like 100 damage. So extra 100 spell damage for that, possibly, and maybe even more. Then it will convert all yellow gems to Doom Skulls, and then it conjures a Doom Storm. So I believe it's the same colors as Lord of Slaughter. Green, blue, red, and what is this? Okay, so instead of blue, it's purple. So there's only one color difference between Kurandara and the Lord of Slaughter. So that's for its ability. For its traits, it will gain a bonus from red gem matches. It is immune to all status effects, Devour, and Mana Burn. It has a 50% chance to curse all enemies when matching 4 or more gems. So that right there is actually really powerful because it's cursing not just one enemy, but it has a 50% chance to curse all enemies on a 4 or more gem match. And for those of you that don't know, Curse is really powerful because troops that are immune to things like Devour, if they're cursed, you can devour them. So that really is a good thing. Now, I'm going to craft this thing here, and I'll have to mess around with teams later with it, but I'm thinking since it converts all yellow gems to Doom Skulls, I'm kind of thinking to use the Storm Caller class, because it creates a light storm every single turn, and that will allow a lot of yellow gems on the board. And then I'll do something like Gorgotha at the top, and that will explode the board, and it won't block this mana color here because Gorgotha is brown and yellow. And that should allow us to power this up and then convert all those yellow gems to Doom Skulls. So I'm going to try a team like that to see if it works. I'm sure a lot of you already have this troop and have teams already planned out for it. But, yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and craft this guy. Finally have it. Nice. Been waiting for him. And I still have about 6,000 diamonds left. Just been saving those up. Waiting for this guy. So, yeah, as far as, like, the best mythics here for this week, we got a lot of good ones. So I would say Lord of Slaughter is number 1 just because it does create 6 brown gems first before it converts all of the brown gems to Doom Skulls. So that's going to almost guarantee that you will have, connections of those Doom Skulls. You won't have to wait for that to happen. Kurandara is probably going to be my number 2 to craft. And then Mistralis is 3, and Yasmin's Chosen is 4. That would be the order in which I would craft these guys this week. So that's it for that, for all those Soulforge troops. Now let's move on to the new troop here. Grab my resources really quick because we're going to need some event keys for opening chests to find that new legendary troop. So let's go over to weekly event. I believe the name of this troop here is Cyrene. It is a Merlantis troop, and you can get 2 Arcane Plains trait stones for the price of 400 glory. So if you do have legendaries, mythics, or classes that need that Arcane trait stone, now's the time to buy a bunch of them, because that's a really good deal for 2 for 400 glory. So this troop, its ability is called Tide Curse. It will drain 7 mana from an enemy and eliminate 15 magic, then stun and entangle them. So it's an okay troop. It's more of like a, what's the right word for it? A disabling troop, I would say, because it's going to drain mana and then it's going to eliminate magic from them. Then it stuns and entangles them. So it's really a disabler troop. Like if you want to go in and just disable the enemy troops, this is a pretty good troop here to use for that. So I'm going to go ahead and buy enough to get myself a mythic ascended version of it. And we're going to move right on to the legendary troop, and then we'll go check out the event that's going on. So we're going to go in here, and this new legendary troop this week is only going to come from your event keys. It is a Merlantis troop, and we're going to go ahead and I have 1,000. Look at that. 1,111 event keys. Hopefully that's a sign of good luck. And we're going to go ahead and open 50 at a time. And if we're really lucky, we're going to get it in the first 50. It's just a legendary troop, and I usually have much better success. There it is. Much better success with legendaries than I do mythics. So here it is. This is the new legendary troop that just came out. It's considered a beast and a giant, which is good because we can use the Titan class to get giants to start with 50% mana. And there is the legendary troop for beasts where we can also use that to make it start with 50% mana. Now let's see its ability and see if it's any good. Pincer of Doom is what it's called. It will deal 28 damage to the first enemy and last enemy. Then there are independent 10% chances to devour the enemies, boosted by 3% for each submerged ally and enemy. Interesting. So we're going to have to do a little calculation here. It has independent 10% chances to devour the enemies that it hits, the first enemy and the last enemy. So it has 2 different 10% chances to devour those 2 enemies. And that percent is boosted by 3% for each submerged ally and enemy. Now, with Aquaticus, when you get a 4 match, we can submerge all of our allies. So that would add an extra 12% onto the 10%. So it looks like we can get a maximum of 24% chances to devour the first and the last enemy. They're independent chances, so it's a 24. It could be a maximum of 24% chance on the first enemy and the last enemy. Now, it could even be much higher if the enemy troops are submerging themselves. So you'd have to add another 12 onto the 24 if all of your allies were submerged and all the 4 enemy troops were submerged. You'd have to add 24 to 10, so you'd have like 34 maximum percentage chance to devour at that point. So, interesting. It's probably going to be closer to the 10% or 13 or some lower number like that on average when you use this troop, but it's 2 independent chances, and when that does proc, it would be nice to devour them. Now let's take a look at its traits. Submerge, it submerges itself when it takes damage, reduces damage from skulls by 25%, and finally it gains 10 life when matching 4 or more gems. Now this is going to be really significant, so what I'm predicting here is that this troop is going to be much more valuable if you get it early on in the game, because this 10 life is not dictated by your current magic or any of that kind of thing, or your level in the game. If you get this legendary troop when you're, let's say, level 100, it's still going to gain 10 life every time. Once you fully trait this, it's going to gain 10 life, and that's really a lot of life when you're that low level. And it's fairly easy to get 4 matches with troops that can convert gems to a certain color, like Valkyrie or something like that. So, I'm going to say that this is going to be a much better troop for lower level players, but it still can be useful for mid-level to high-level players. Not bad. Not a bad legendary troop. So, yeah, we did get lucky. We got it out of the first 50. And since it is a Merlantis troop, so we should be able to use it for this event. So the current event's called the Tide Oracle. We're going to go in and check this out. But I just want to say here that this week is Guild Wars, so be sure to set up your Sentinels and prepare your defense teams and all that good stuff, and have fun in Guild Wars. So moving on here, we're going to go to the shop. We need to get ourselves a medal before we build ourselves a team, because I need to see if it's going to be spell damage or skull damage. And honestly, I think they should just have a combination medal, because there really isn't a wide variety of troops in the game that create skulls. Most of the damage in this game is spell damage, so I think they should just have a combination medal. And this is what I mean by a combination medal, because that's what they're doing this week. Is it's 160% skull and spell damage for all troops in the current event. So that's what they should do all the time for these events, because that gives you a nice variety of being able to build a team. You can use skulls if you want, or you can use spell damage. And that way you wouldn't get stuck with events where, you just, like that one event a couple of weeks ago, they did skull damage and there was no weapons or troops available to convert or create skulls. It was pretty frustrating. So anyway, now that's out of the way, let's talk about the troops that we can use here. So we got the new legendary troop. Let me just upgrade this guy real quick. We'll do this and we'll fully trade him. We'll do that and that. And so for mythic troops, we have Aquaticus, we have Undine, and then we have Charbidus, or Carbidus. I don't even know how to really pronounce this name properly, but that's the new legendary. Then we have Leviathan, we have Nimue, we have the Deep King for legendary troops there. So we got 4 legendary troops, 2 mythic troops that we can use. As far as mana generation, Azura is pretty decent. The Sea Witch does create some mana here, blue and brown gems. I think there's a couple others in here. Yeah, Christ Turtle is really good for converting into brown mana, but we don't have a whole lot of troops that do use brown mana here. But if you do build a team around that, that could work pretty good. Yeah, so not a whole lot going on there. We do have a few good ones. Aquaticus is one of my favorite troops in the game, so I'm going to throw him in there. And I might just throw this new legendary in there for the heck of it. This one here does true splash damage. That could be useful. And, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. As far as weapons, we are stuck to Merlantis weapons. So let's see what's available for that. So if you do happen to have these 2 weapons that were in the forge, if you already have them, you could use those for generating mana. Otherwise, we're just stuck with very little for weapons here. You do have this, though, the Writhing Staff. Deals scatter damage, creates 8 skulls and tangles. And since we are getting also a big boost to skull damage, that could work as well. So this might be a good weapon to throw in there. But let's see. We have, this is considered Merlantis. Merlantis. So I'm going to go ahead and upgrade this weapon. This is going to generate blue and green gems for Merlantis troops. And I think Tidecaller is Merlantis. So we can have a full team of Merlantis here. Yeah, it is. I was correct on that. And banner, let's see. What do we want? This is going to create green gems and blue. We'll definitely want blue. And maybe we could go blue-yellow just because the weapon is yellow. Could do something like this maybe. And I don't know. Aquatica seems like the better troop to have towards the top. Just because it's going to generate mana when it, yeah. I don't know, something like this might work. At least there's some decent troops to work with, even if we don't have great weapons. And pretty much anything that does spell damage is going to be good early on like this, because they're just so low on health and armor. Yeah, if you have Aquaticus, I definitely recommend using that mythic troop. The Deep King, that is an underworld troop, so it's not really incredibly difficult to get, but it is a decent troop for an event like this because it does do true splash damage to 2 random enemies. And let me get it powered up just to show you what that does. And we'll grab this first. And then, so it's going to do true damage, 2 random enemies. It's true splash damage. So once it hits one, it's going to hit the other ones around it. So that's a pretty good troop. And it's fairly low mana cost too. It's only like 15 mana, I think. I'll take a look at it. Yeah, it's only 15 mana, so. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I got for you guys this week. Hopefully, Guild Wars goes good for you guys, and that's pretty much it for that event. Now, in like 3 or 4 days, we will have portals opening. So this is going to be one of those really busy weeks where we have 3 events going on at the same time. We're going to have Guild Wars, we're going to have this Tide Oracle, and then we're going to have a raid boss coming in halfway through the week. So it's going to be a really busy week for events, and I don't really like weeks when they do that because I'm short on time as it is, and then they're throwing all these different events at us in 1 week. But it is what it is, and try to have fun with the game. Other than that, you do have the class trial for Merlantis coming up later, Faction Assault on Tuesday as always, and it's pretty much all that's going on this week. So that's all I got for you guys this time in this Soulforge video. So hopefully you guys got something out of this, and thanks for watching my videos as always, and I love you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. Later.